Grabster. Hello.
Hello.
Do you hear me?
I do. Oh, look at you. Good boy.
Preparing, as I do for every drum-based interview, with some...
Yeah, how many were there? This is the first one. No.
Yeah, actually, first drum interview. Loving this.
I feel honored, sir.
Yeah,
I feel honored.
I don't know. I think the honor might be mine, but let's get stuck in. This is a completely unedited start to finish, not live to the world, but live in the sense that we are here now and improvising.
Great. So it's first take, kind of no editing.
Absolutely first take. And I just interviewed Henrik Linder earlier on, and his phone fell over at least 18 times during the process. It's staying in. I'm going to have a little bell, bing, 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 every time it falls.
Okay, no, I'm fine. This is my laptop, so.
Yeah, it looks very set, like nice warm light in the background. For anyone only listening in the audio version of the podcast, highly recommend you go to YouTube and check this out in Technicolor with the warm German lighting in the background. I really dig that.
And please, the Proton Pack as well.
The Proton, what the?
This is an original, like, I mean, not a, this is a replica, of course, but I've got to show you the lights, okay?
Yes.
This is a treat for the YouTube. You have to check this on YouTube.
Yes.
So let's check this out. Okay, with the lights and everything.
Come on.
I'll just leave it on.
Oh, that is so great. Leva, you should be wearing it on every gig, dude.
It's fucking heavy. It's really, it's like a proper... I had that I got that, I used it as an excuse, the DVD, for getting my childhood kind of dream equipment here, because I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan. But I used it for the Art and Science of Groove DVD. We have a nice little gag in there.
Okay, apparently I haven't seen that, and we'll now go watch it after this. But that's awesome, man. Is it called Don't Cross the Streams, or is that the new DVD coming out?
No. Man, one of the disadvantages, one of the many disadvantages of the Corona crisis is that the new Ghostbusters in 2020 that was set to be released in summer, it will be postponed, I think. So.
Okay, is it filmed already?
Yes.
Okay.
Paul Rudd, and I think the last one I wasn't particularly a fan of, so the new one I'm having high hopes. Man, this is distracting the shit out of me. I have to turn it off.
Oh man.
So at least my phone doesn't fall over, but I can't have the Proton Pack because it's an unlicensed nuclear accelerator. So
absolutely, I'm well aware, and I love this. Okay, it's tragic what is happening around the world right now, but the avenues in which it is pushing us and the kinds of things we get to do, this is so unique. And I was always against, for some reason, doing the video or the phone-in interview. I love being in person. But there is just this other element of relaxation. You're in your home.
Yeah.
Relaxed and have props.
Yes. Yes. I would never bring this to an interview, but,
yes,
having
absolutely.
it here, why not?
Although, pro tip, I really think you should.
Yes. Honestly, when my son was very, he's still very young, but when he was even younger, and we had these moments of in the evening, I'm scared, something underneath the bed or something. I put this thing on and I was like, okay, let's take a look, It's like, we went into the room, was like, okay, let's see. And that really put him to rest, because I was always having the proper gear, checking it out, taking it seriously, it's been like, wow. Okay, let's go in there, let's check it out.
Okay, where's my pen? I'm making notes here.
Parenting tip.
Number one from Greb: get Proton Pack. I think that's going to be awesome. I think that also kind of only works if you have boys.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. We'll see. I'm going to buy one, and hopefully we have some of each when we start having them.
Dude, it has so many advantages. I can only recommend it.
Well, this has gone in a direction I could never have imagined. So I'm grateful for that. But that also is, when I think about the times we've played together, that's also my feeling of memories of our performances for the most part. It has gone in a direction which I did not preconceive. I don't know how you feel about that when you go into a performance. Is
now in a good or in a bad way? I mean,
Johnny's out.
Yeah, exactly.
No, of course, in a good way. But is there something you're really conscious of being open about before you sit down at the drums at the start of a concert, or as you're preparing for something? Or even is that something you're conscious of when you look back on a concert and think, oh yeah, that really didn't go in a direction I preconceived?
It is one of the reasons why I think I focused on my band, and I focused on the music that I do and with people that I like, and less on sideman things, because I want to have the luxury to afford that, to allow that, because and there is this wonderful book that I read when I studied music of Kenny Werner. It's a little bit hippie-ish, but it's beautiful. It's called Effortless Mastery, and
classic.
It's and there's this meditation on this CD, as it were, and I remember I was on tour with a British band from a guy called Colin Towns, and we toured the UK. Like miserable gas stations and like you know, like
rain,
but yeah, and the band just was a fresh father, and like it was just the music was very complex, but beautiful, but wonderful, but just in some cases I have to admit, like not maybe right up my alley, and I really had to focus, and I was ashamed because even after a couple of gigs I wasn't able to completely let go of the cheat sheets that I had underneath my side snare, and I was like, damn it.
Yeah.
And I then listened to this thing, I think for the first time, and he said one sentence which was like, let go of the need to play good. And I'm like, what? This is devilish material. Like, I will not listen to this. And then another thing he said, like, what are you talking about? This is of the devil. And then the next thing he said, which really impressed the shit out of me, was that he said, let go of the need to play music. I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And this was one of the things where I was like, wow, yeah. It was one of the things where I was like, wow, how much do I define myself, and how much does my identity really depend on making no mistakes, or like, and how much do I really maybe come to another level to allow expression, to accept whatever comes out, and how open am I, or how closed am I to maybe inhibit that stuff to happen. So it's like when you try to control a conversation with a woman, you know, and you think you're doing a great job. It's like, you know what? You're missing out, man. Yeah. You're like, who knows what could have happened if you just would have listened and let it happen, and then try to be. So it is a thing that I try to make happen. It's wonderful if you say that you felt that too, because it's a thing that's very important to me. And I think the most fun that there can be had in music, this curiosity, this kind
discovery,
of like, let's see.
That's what we're always looking for. We know what we already know. We probably know it a little too well, I think. We work on it far too much for our own good.
Yeah.
It's those, dude, it's the reason I've been 17,000 times around the world. Just a rusher. I mean, it feels that it is that far to play with you and to play that music. You know, it's like,
I really appreciate that. Yeah, you took long ways upon yourself for one or two gigs at a time.
That's
sometimes.
Just the randomness of the gigs we've played so far. They happen to have been in far-flung corners of the world. We haven't played Hamburg or Los Angeles, for instance.
Yeah,
we should maybe work on that.
It had to be Singapore and Thailand and
Vancouver,
and Russia,
was pretty local for me.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Vancouver. That was very nice.
No pressure at all with all those drummers around. Do you, when obviously you are of the drum culture just by the nature of you have produced instructional things, you host drum camps, you are around drummers a lot of the time. Has it is it something you have ever struggled with, being around that many peers or that many people playing the same instrument to an extremely high level in a lot of cases? How long did that take you to let go of, in terms of just being you in the space and not being intimidated or whatever it might be by any of those other people?
I had to let go of that pretty early because I was thrown into that world, and I loved that world like forever. So I loved clinics. I loved, these Buddy Rich Memorial Scholarship tapes, like where Vinny is playing with the big band, Weckl is playing with the big band, Louis Bellson. Like, I mean, it's just an absolute all-star kind of thing. And I just always loved the drum scene. You know, I mean, I love music a lot, and I love touring and playing with people, definitely, but I always respected this world and loved it a lot. And so when I was thrown into that pretty early on, like around in my 20s, early 20s, I felt that anxiety every once in a while, of course, because I was very insecure and definitely not not where I want to be. I mean, I'm still not where I want to be, but I was definitely further away from it then. but so I mean, there are just a couple of experiences that learned me or taught me. I mean, one that I will never forget is that I was at the NAMM show and Sono told me just to bang on the drums as much as I wanted. I'm like, oh, okay, and I did that, and I just ran out of material after like hours and hours of like blah, and I was like, I had this moment, this one moment where I was like, damn it, like I don't know what to do. There are people standing around, and so I was like, I know what to do. I love Steve Gadd. I will play a couple of my Steve Gadd licks. And then I learned for the first time in my life that playing Steve Gadd licks is only fun as long as Steve Gadd is not watching. and that's where I figured out, it's like, you know what? I mean, I would never put myself in the category of my idols and but as soon as you at least swim in the same soup, in the same events, kind of, you better offer your stuff. That's right. and you're better off that way, because no one can be a better Dave Weckl than Dave Weckl, although I tried for many years, but no one can. Like, Dave is amazing and will always be amazing, and all those guys, and I do my thing, and if you don't like that, that's fine too. But I can go to bed with a good feeling if I can say I did the best I could.
Sure.
And that's all we can do.
Absolutely. When it comes to bass and drums, and you talk about focusing on your own thing, your music, your band, presenting your music, that from what I have heard from Moving Parts involves a bass player. Conceptually, are there some things that you think are like fundamentally important, or have been to you listening wise, for bass players and drummers, perhaps specific recordings that you thought, here's the framework and here's the foundation that I can build upon? What were some of the things that really stood out to you, like conceptually, when you were putting your own music together?
For me, the bass is the fundament. I always write the bass line first.
Okay.
I always write the bass line first. That's the beginning of the song. And I write the drum parts last.
See, I'm the opposite. That's cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, but because first of all, a bass line in the writing process allows me to get such a rough, nice idea recorded by singing it on my answering machine back then, or like now on the phone or whatever, and just to because you have the tempo, you have a kind of a groove already, and you have the chords almost, and you then if you put a bass line and a melody, it's basically it, right? And then everything else is just like, okay, so that's so for just to capture ideas, that is always the first thing for me, the bass line. Second of all, I forgot what the second thing is.
Just talking about the framework of building, you know, drums and bass and what sticks out for you, you know, like.
Yeah, sorry. Yes. Second of all, the advantage of this is that I distrust myself if I would start from the drum perspective. I don't think it's a healthy thing. If you write as an instrumentalist,
because you know it too well, or you fall back on things that might not be as experimental.
I'm afraid that I wanna, you know, everyone when they practice, they have their favorite or their new weapon of mass destruction.
Yeah.
They're like, and they're so proud because they worked so long on it, and they now have this thing, and they just want to go out and shoot it. They want to go out and use it. And then I don't think that this is a healthy attitude to deal with. I want to be in a situation and then be like, what does this situation require? And then I look into my toolbox and be like, oh, but I don't want to go out like, what is this saying? Like, if you are a hammer, everything will look like a nail, you know? So if you try to make everything fit, it's like, oh yeah. So I try to never write from the drum perspective. I always try to write, as I say, bass line. That is the most all-encompassing for me, like that outlines everything already. Then there has to be like nice melody, of course. And then I usually sit there and then try to come up. I finish the whole arrangement. I finish the whole thing. And then I try to come up with drum parts for that. And I'm usually like, who wrote this? It's like, I don't know what to play to this. Oh, damn it. You know, so, but I love that point. I love, because then I think I can be the most honest in terms of like, okay, and I should also be the most flexible as a drummer to then make something work. I think the other stuff is more difficult. I mean, at least for me, definitely, like to come up with chords and make it fit and stuff. It's a bloodbath. So,
is that something you impress upon your students, like at drum camps? Is that something you try and plant in their ear in terms of the composition and being original and honest? Is that something you think from a young age or from an early experience level you can start to develop?
Oh yeah. I think if you just there are certain things you can try to communicate in terms of like doing, in terms of behavior. So, which is the thing of like the woman that's at the counter in a hotel and she hates her job, and the company knows this, and they tell her like, but you have to say, hello, I hope your travel was okay, and good morning, we're happy to have you. And then you get this woman that says like, hello, I hope your travel was okay, I'm happy that you're here. And you just feel all the hate that's behind it and all the dishonesty, right? But she says it because that's what should. And it's the same thing that we do in education sometimes, that we tell drummers like, okay, play this groove. It will make the impression that, you know, that, but it's behavioral thing. It's not inside out. It's not really. But if you even tell beginners sometimes, if you get them to like, don't focus on what you're playing, listen to sing the bass line in your head. They will open, you know, when they do, but they will do.
Right.
It will kind of come together automatically, because this pattern seeking machine helps us to make automatically things kind of fit, and we can use that when we listen and when we focus on it. And I have a whole drum camp about time and groove where we invite a bass player and everyone gets to play with him, and he comments on what he needs and what he thinks is missing. And I think that's always a big eye opener. Sometimes to people that play for a while that maybe never have sat down like really with a bass player, which is baffling to me, because I think this is I do a lot of jokes about bass players, and I think it's important because we're brothers and we have to tease each other. But the truth of the matter is I always loved to just meet earlier with the bass player and to play and to check out material. It's amazing.
So what's your perspective on how everyone is kind of, first of all, the 3-second attention span with the Instagram and the social media, and then just diving down the rabbit holes of YouTube, where there is a wealth of incredible information. But I see a little bit of a trend of people kind of just stopping there rather than taking that information, figuring out, and then going like you said, to sit down with a bass player and play, or just communicating with other people. What's your perspective on that, and how do you communicate that to students to be like, okay, this is great, but the important thing is really other human beings, other musicians, and that interaction?
Yeah, there is this Confucius thing, I think, where he said, like, you can show something to people, you can explain something to people, but if you let them experience it, that's, you know, that's kind of the holy grail. I'm paraphrasing here.
Yeah, sure.
But I think this playing with another human being and things coming together is such a beautiful thing. I mean, it's the best thing in the world. Let's be honest. Like,
Right.
this makes it all worth it. I always have some stupid idiots that, like, when I break down my drums, they're like, oh, you should have learned the flute. You know, it's like, no, it's worth it, man. It's totally worth it.
Yeah.
It's totally worth it. I'd rather do whatever, but to play a beat and to have things like come together and just click, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, it's the best. And you can just encourage it and talk about it and hopefully help people to get there. But I mean, the beautiful thing is, I think as soon as people did it once, they get hooked, and as soon as they get close to that.
So it doesn't take much. It's just making that little connection that helps, right?
Yeah. You can smell it when you get close to it. It's like, oh, there's something nice there, and that's the beautiful thing about frustration too, where it's like you're never really frustrated unless you can't feel it already, you know. Like, where it's close. You can't have it yet, but it's close. So it has two sides. It's good and it's hopeful, and it's bad. But
moving away from like the teacher-student relationship and people in that early embryonic stage of experiencing those things, how are you able to continue doing this? Like, get up every day and work on all of these things we're talking about, because it's not like that's reserved for 14 to 22 years old. That's constant throughout our lives, and we always have to find inspiration to do it every day. And I always think of my good friend and boss for many years, Randy Brecker, who is a trumpet player. And it's one of the most difficult. You take a day off and it's like you go back a month in progress. The embouchure and this stuff. And he's, in his 70s, and he says, yeah, really, the first thing I want to do every day is not long tones. So where do you get that from? And is that still really a thing, or do you struggle with it? Is that something that ebbs and flows in terms of how much you want to work on what you do?
I always make a point of making a big distinction between playing and practicing. I think practicing is a certain thing, and playing is a certain other thing, completely other thing. I try to keep it as separate as possible and as clear, and as soon as that these edges get blurred, that's when there's problems for me. I want to play every day. I don't want to practice every day nowadays. Okay. And this is another thing where we sometimes make maybe a mistake as educators, because we take some things for granted. Sometimes I hear educators say, like, oh, you got to be able to do this and that if you want to, become a session musician. Or you got to be able to do this and that if you want to play in a band, or if you want to get faster, or whatever it is, the promises you can make. You always say, like, you have to be able to do this, otherwise you will basically fail. So always this kind of Damocles sword,
ultimatum kind of thing.
Like, and the point that we sometimes forget making is, you know what? It's just way much more fun. Like, if honestly, if you are more sufficient at something, and if something flows and you don't have to think as much while playing, and stuff just comes out, or you don't have to have question marks all the time, but it's just like, it's the most amazing thing ever.
Right.
And that's worth it to just sit at this thing and be like, ooh, and feel like a beginner, because that's what practicing is. You sit down and you feel like a stupid, untalented piece of coal, or I don't know. but that's part of the game, to then relax into and to trust into that. Then that informs your playing, and you all of a sudden, some things that used to be difficult flow a little bit better. And it's these moments where you think like, it's just, and I mean, that's the whole beauty of it. And of course, it's not something for the impatient, because every instrument, and maybe trumpet more, but every instrument is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And,
absolutely. Let's talk about that. This is a question I'm trying to ask as many people as possible, because it's something I get asked all the time, and it's a very much a generalization and a big picture question that I personally think needs to be a little more segmented. It's like can you give me any tips for improvising? Can you give me any tips for this? Like there are 2 or 3 things that I or you or somebody's going to say that is going to completely change the landscape of someone's process. And my initial reaction is like, you're thinking about this entirely backwards. Like you should start thinking more closely about the individual steps and the fact that, like you just said, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and there's no easy way. So do people ask you that question? Like, hey, Benny, what's the best thing for my rhythm? Or what's the best thing for my whatever, you know?
Sure. I always see that as, in Germany, we call it Schluckimpfung, which means, I don't know what the term is, but it's this vaccination where you have this spoon and you have this sugar and then you drip something on it.
Yes.
Right? So it's always this, basically. Then answer
info.
Yeah, it's directly translated, it's swallow vaccination.
Nice.
Well, all right. Anyway, it just occurred to me how weird that sounds. But anyway, yeah. So an answer can always be that only, where it's like, yeah, I'm going to give you what you want, but I'm also going to give you what you need, what I think you need, at least, that is all that we can do. But I mean, in terms of improvisation, of course, there is some stuff in there that is dressed in overalls and feels like work. And then there is other stuff in there that is just, I mean, in terms of improvisation, there can be a lot of things said that are relieving to people, for me, like, but because people think improvisation is a proper and a constant flow of ideas. When I jam with other drummers, they stop after 10 minutes, they're like, oh, I'm empty, you know, where it's like, you played more ideas in those last 5 minutes than I've played like in the last 10 years, like because you don't use them. You don't structure them. You don't repeat them.
Yeah.
You don't really use them and make variations of them and like develop a motivic idea and some dramaturgy. Like I just took doom doom.
Right.
Doom doom. Doom boom. Like, oh, 2 different notes. You know. Oh.
Yeah.
It's. But and that's usually all that it takes. That improvisation is writing, arranging, orchestration, and performance in one sandwich. And for most people, they struggle with improvisation because they think it's having ideas and playing them, having ideas and playing them. And if I played them, I have to have a new idea. Oh, I don't have a new idea. And that's where the whole stress comes from, where it's like, you know what? Take an idea and now put it through your mincer and see what comes out and what all these tree of possibilities that come out. And then there's way more relaxation there and stuff. But for that, you also need, of course, all the other stuff that you have to work on: time awareness and melody awareness. And that's the beauty, that it's all interconnected.
Do you dedicate time each day, or do you just have periods where you're like, okay, I am in listening mode now and I have music that I'm deeply in love with and want to analyze or just be immersed in more? Do you have that? Like,
I haven't done that in a while. I tried to discipline myself. After I studied music, I really realized, so when I came out of that whole studying thing and moved to Hamburg, I realized I have some catching up to do. Where I then really said, I want to force myself, almost, because it was not in my daily habit, to actually just listen to music. There's a chapter in my first DVD about just listening, where I say, sit down, close your eyes, and just listen to music, not while doing your dishes, not while driving the car, not while doing your paperwork. No, you just sit there and you just listen to music. And if you get nervous, you're just not listening enough. You're not focusing enough. You're not like, and God forbid, maybe you would listen to a whole album in the right order. I mean, I know this is crazy, but
it's so 1954 of you, dude.
I know, it's so old school. I'm so old school on so many levels, but I know, call me crazy, but maybe the artist thought about why the order is as it is, and maybe it is kind of a journey that you then for the first time can hear, because so far you always listen to your favorite song and made your own playlist. And
it's my least favorite part of the recording and production process is putting the songs in order and really sitting there and think. And I sit there for if I have the luxury of time, days, weeks.
Yeah,
it takes 50 different iterations. And then I see it as like singles, and people then they only listen to a minute and 30 seconds of the song. I'm like, wow, okay.
Yeah. That's one of the things I'm like, that the album kind of went away as a format. That's, but it all has advantages and disadvantages. I mean, I did this thing with Gary Husband where I then from the beginning thought, you know what, we're just going to improvise and we will not going to care whether those songs will fit together. Mm-hmm. We will just see what comes out, and then we have like singles. So that also had something freeing. So this is a positive example of this new kind of packaging, but of course there are also things that I kind of miss about an album format.
And you're not by any means anti, modern technology, I guess. You are a fan of the way things are going, despite missing the album format, or do you see more advantages than disadvantages to the current climate for the industry?
I do, because I'm a control freak, and I
have
just
nothing but control now.
Yeah, and I don't like having a boss and have people telling me what to do. So I sat in nice office rooms of record companies and people that I think are absolutely stupid, telling me like, oh, I think we miss a disco guitar there. And like, I was like, gosh, I want to kill myself. It's like, so I don't miss that at all. I always was like, you know what? I will pay you like thousands of bucks if you just let me do this exactly as I want it, and just leave me alone.
Yeah.
So we maybe earn less now, but for me, it was always about the if I can get out what I want to get out with people that I love, and like Rubinstein said, if I wouldn't get any money for what I do, I would do it for free, but don't tell my agent that.
Exactly.
It's yeah. I choose. I think it's something that we have to train for. I choose to believe that we live in the best times ever for music right now.
I agree with
because
you.
I think everything else
you just tell me why.
Yeah, because there is no alternative. There simply is no alternative. It's like when you ask yourself when you have a kid, do I regret having a kid? It's like, no. You know what? That question is, this is a non-question, know? Like you accept the way it is, and you make now the most amazing life of yourself. That's how you do it. And I think there's nothing less sexy than a musician, especially someone that had a lot of like success in the old days, that now bemoans how it is now, and how that the young cats are not disciplined enough, and it's like, thanks, next. Like I don't want to become one of those guys. I want to stay open and stay positive.
And what really bothers me is that slightly older generation than us, maybe 10 years older, who really went on the bridge of the two eras, but were like really had major success before. I hate it when they start telling me how bad it is for me. Start telling a younger generation, oh, it's terrible for you, dude. And you're sitting there looking up like, actually, no, I'm having a great time traveling the world. I'm enjoying my life. Like, I hate that. And there are some, like, I wish I wish I had the cojones to be like a Bill Burr and really just not give a shit and let rip right now with a laundry list of names. But there are some pretty legendary musicians, heroes of
Yeah,
mine on that list who just refuse to admit electricity has been invented, essentially.
yeah.
It's really unbelievable.
I mean, honestly, this is. I say that in because I am that hard to myself, and I want to prime myself to not get like in that area. On the other side, I have humility because I this is still a test that I think will come towards us when there is another new technology that we don't understand at all,
Right.
and we are just a little bit more tired to do the eighth change in our mindset, in our
Yeah.
worldview.
100%.
That's when we get tested.
Yeah.
And that's when I, for example, like when I heard every once in a while like people are like, oh, that's like it's like, you know what, this guy has been changing his trajectory without losing himself,
Yeah.
like for 30 years, and you have to prove that first before you say anything negative about any one of those cats, because everyone can be cool with a couple of videos like for a year or two.
Sure.
But I wanna see you after 30 years still being.
That's the thing, right? We're maybe, I mean, even though YouTube has been around since 05, we're maybe not even a decade into it really being an era of content creation and of people having success and views and follows and subscribers and all this stuff. So yeah, I love that sentiment of like, yeah, give me a call in 30 years, buddy. You know, when you're whatever endorsement and whatever subscriber list is run its course. Yeah, big fan of looking at the long game.
And it's just the same with us as well. Like for I have, although I don't like openly express it all the time, but I had these thoughts of like, oh, let's see, you know, let's see. Yeah, but I always have that towards myself as well. So when I think like, oh, you know, it's everything's fine, it's like, and especially in these times, you know, I don't rule out that in like 5 or 6 months I have to cook the noodles one more time, and you know, so
it's very interesting. It's scary and interesting, and I think we find ourselves in a pretty unique position having an online presence and having something that isn't touring. Like I know, as I'm sure you do, a lot of people whose entire careers have just stopped because there are no gigs, like zero gigs. People who spend 5-6 nights of the week playing, whether that be locally or on the road. And I'm really conscious right now of not like trying to take advantage of the platform and be kind of grabby, I mean, and you know, selfish, but also conscious of the fact that I am a small business, as are you. Like we have products and we sell them to a public, and finding that balance of the public need to be entertained, but also they don't have an unlimited supply of disposable income right now with no income coming in for most people. It's a very delicate balance of how to address that.
But I think it's okay to offer something that you already have anyway.
Oh, for sure.
I don't think that we have to keep it secret if we have something, you know. It's like I'm always like just baffled that I did these DVDs or like have them as downloadable things, and I still, people tell me like, I don't know where to buy them.
Oh.
It's like, it's just insane to me. It's like, you know what, maybe it's not that bad that I every once in a while just say, hey, you can go to my website if you want to, you know. Like I'm not a guerrilla marketing guy, but I think it's okay to every once in a while just say it and offer it. And
it's amazing the emails we get at my e-store. So the person has come to the homepage where all the products are. They've then navigated away from the homepage where they could buy the products to send an email to ask where they could buy the product.
Yeah, that's pretty something, huh?
That's pretty crazy. That's I'm like, probably I don't want all the other follow up emails after you buy the product. So maybe you should look somewhere else.
It's really, it's interesting. But I mean, that's what internet companies, I think, do. They try to reduce, I think they call it friction. They try to reduce friction as much as possible and be like, how can we make it even more, even more obvious and yeah. But I mean, I'm bad at that stuff. Yeah.
I don't know. I've been
Step
doing
by
it so
step.
long. I jumped in day one with MySpace and all of that stuff back in the day. It's just part of my DNA a little bit now, which I'm
That's awesome.
sometimes grateful for, and sometimes it's a little bit of a curse because I will just spend 21 hours a day working on it, which is a little crazy.
Yeah.
One thing, and maybe because this is not the shortest topic in the world, maybe we could end on this, is my two biggest pursuits are sound and time. And from a drummer's perspective, also with a bass, just anything where you need to move air. I'm thinking specifically of your floor tom, which moves ever such a lot of air. But just in terms of, and this is something I get asked all the time, how loud do you play at home? You know, with bass, it's a problem. I'm lucky to live in a house. I don't really have neighbors, so I can crank it a little bit, but we never get to that stage volume. Even, I know you have a practice room where you can play loud, but you still don't get that depth. You still don't get that projection outside of your small space. What are some of the things you are thinking about when you are developing that sound, thinking forwards to taking that out live, which I'm guessing is the ultimate goal, is to present your music?
Yeah. A couple of things. The first one is that drummers practice on a pad way too loud. Yeah, I mean, like most people, like when they play, they'd be like da 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 da, and it breaks my heart. Like when I see like people online and they're just like da 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 da, and they try to get it up to speed.
Okay.
If you do that, and I would challenge everyone, it's an easy test for everyone to do. Take your snare drum, take your pad right next to it, play however you would. Don't think of the snare drum. Play like you would play the pad, and then go on the snare. And you will think, oh my God, like
super loud, right?
This is the most caveman, like stupid that I like. No one, you can't use any of that. Nothing, right? So this is the first thing. Don't get into the illusion to do something here and then wonder why your sound doesn't improve, or you maybe even make it worse. So really check out, do an A/B test and really be like, these are the roles I want. I almost can't hear them. It's like, yeah, because it's a pad.
Right.
So you go to pad and say, that's where I should be. That's kind of the less amplitude, less like, okay, cool. So that's the first thing. So that you really prepare it so you can use it. Because sometimes we make ourselves completely blow out of proportion, and then we wonder why we don't have any control, and like on the cymbals, like.
And I think that is very true for bass as well, playing without an amp. I think that's a perfect analogy because you're digging in, trying to create the sound. So this is an awesome parallel. Okay.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah, that's definitely me. I play bass way too loud. Like I love it. The ding, ding.
Yeah, man, that's very rock and roll, baby.
But the good thing is no one ever has to hear me play bass. So. But the other thing is, the drums are a weird instrument because it's not one instrument.
Right.
It is just a couple of things placed in one location, and they're different materials even. I mean, like this is madness. And because people think, if we apply rudiments to the kit, I don't like that term at all. Like people that know me know that's like, ask Benny about applying the rudiments to the kit. Watch him go. So like applying rudiments to the kit, it's like, okay, you have these phrases, these long phrases, but let's not go into that. But the thing is, you think snare technique thing, and then you apply it to the kit. That means that you have your motions and you just put it on different surfaces.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a guarantee to have a bad sound, because those surfaces react very individually and very differently. And this might sound like a bad news to some drummers, or too complicated and stuff, but it's not that hard if you really just respect of like, it's simple. Number one, metal, you have metal plates and plastic membranes. If you hit metal plates with the same intensity than plastic membranes, will they sound at the same volume? No. Right. Why do we do it all the time? So you have to, and although it's super counterintuitive, you have to pull back when you play cymbals. Another effect is that all of a sudden you could use overhead mics as drum set mics.
Right.
If you don't do that, you have to use overhead mics as cymbal mics, right? Because they're just too loud, and then you have to, anyway, but this is engineering already.
But that's important. That's really important, man. It's all in the sound category. I want to hear it all. Like Svenny is a huge part of it, like.
Definitely. And I made a sport out of it. Like, I think questions, the quality of questions define like the quality of answers that you get. And I tried to become good at answering. And I mean, you are great at asking great questions as well. But to ask great questions. And one great question, for example, that I found out is whenever I work with any engineer or producer, I always try to stress it a little bit and be like, for example, what are the top 3 things? That's always a good start. And then to say, like, if you could wave a magic wand and you could change one thing about all drummers on the planet, what would you do? And I asked this every engineer I ever worked with. And 90% of all of them, I mean, 100% didn't maybe say it in the first thing, but everyone said, oh, they play their cymbals quietly. Everyone, because that is just a huge problem with drummers. That's the huge problem with, like, if you play it the same way and you just make the high frequencies louder and it makes your sound small. It's like when you have one of these old hi-fi stereo systems. I'm old, I still have one, with the knobs. You have the treble, you have the middle and the bass. If you want something to sound nice and balanced or even fat, you wouldn't turn down the bass and the middle. No. But that's what drummers do when they hit everything the same. The snare becomes louder, the cymbals become louder. And that's where you can spot a beginner or someone who doesn't record a lot when it's like, then the singers, they get this Robert De Niro impression face. They get this like kind of, because the cymbals are just like, they're just going through the brain. And so that's the thing, play the cymbals quieter. And this next thing is, the bigger the diameter of the drum, the more energy you have to put in to move all the air that's in that container. It's just physics. Contrary to that is the snare, because it has higher tension and it has these snare wires down there, which were invented for war purposes. They were invented to tell people a couple of miles away that they will be in some deep shit very soon, right? That's what that was invented for. And now we're stuck with this war weapon in the middle of this whole craziness, and you have to balance it out. You cannot, and a test that I propose in my sound camps always is like, you think if you let a stick just fall on each drum and you go through the drum, you think with the same, just physics, 1 centimeter away, let it fall, let it fall, let it fall. You think it would do this, gang, dum, 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 because that's what you feel it does.
Right.
But how does it sound? It sounds gang, dum, dum.
Right.
And so you have to, in the most extreme floor tom to snare, you have to play dum, ga, dum, ga. You have to play ga, da, to get an even sound.
Yeah.
And that's the secret for me, for internal dynamics that so many people don't get.
Do you bench press like 180 kilos just to get a sound out of your floor tom?
I don't, but I have to really like put a lot in there, because I tune my tom very low. That's another thing. I tune for sound. I never tune for feel. Some drummers tune in a way so they can take their stick, and when they hit the toms, like, and they have so much rebound because they're like, and it's easier to play, like they just, I mean, it's the same thing like with you with the bass, where like some people, they love their strings to be low, like, but you just sacrifice sound.
100%.
And it's the same, like some people tune their bass drums high because they have more rebound and stuff. Like, no.
Yeah.
How do you want your bass drum to sound? And people are always like, oh, you have a 20-inch bass drum, but it's, because it feels horrible. I tune it as low as I can, and I want this compact kind of, like very deep kind of thing, but then I have to do all the work. And it's just a set of priorities. And recording for a couple of years. And
Absolutely.
Svenny was a big part in that, of course. Svenny,
Yeah.
for those who don't know, Yannick knows him very well now too. But Svenny is my sound engineer for like over 25 years now, and I learned a lot from him.
And just, I think that's something that not a lot of people do. Like, I know Weckl does his own sound, for instance, but like not so many people are that like dialed in to take their own guy or girl on the road to mix sound. And I think it really is it's a game changer over a tour manager or an assistant or an extra musician in the band. Sven is an extra musician in the band.
Definitely.
You know? Jojo does this, you know, front of house, you do this, Weckl on some level because he's doing it himself. And that, to me, those are three people with some of the best drum sounds alive today. You know, that's just real game changer.
I think it's simple. If you make it if you make it an area of focus, so to speak, then it kind of grows. If you think like, then it doesn't, because many drummers have some areas of focus that I would say, like, you know what, it's not that important. and other areas are like totally dormant, where you think like, you know what, if you would apply that your same like interest and like into that, you would be amazed like how, and time and sound are like two things that cannot be overstated.
Yeah.
Like, because these are these house subjects that feed everything that you play, you know, and when you work on these, I always like to say, when you work on those two things, or these principles, fundamental things that will influence everything else, you usually don't have to tell anyone. People will ask you about it.
Absolutely.
Like when you have now this crisis and you work on that, when you come back into the practice room, people would be like, what happened? Like, it's not something where it's like, hey, I have one new fill. No. You change completely the way you come across to and you feel, basically you change the way you feel to the world around you. And
what better way is there to be identified as a musician than by your time and your sound? I know that I can listen to one note of Mike Stern or one note of John Coltrane. There's not even any time yet, just on sound, because they haven't moved anywhere rhythmically. One note, I know it's them. Then you hear two or three notes and you factor in the time and you just transported to their world immediately. I think that's such a strong connection. That is a connection I have with you. From my personal feeling, when we play, I hear that floor tom, I hear the kick, I hear the of the cymbals, and I'm like, oh, this is the zone. And it gives me this place to create from. That is what I appreciate about working with you. I wanted to say that publicly, finally.
Thank you so much.
We have to wrap it up, otherwise this whole thing will be trashed because Zoom won't let us save more than an hour of material.
Oh, wow.
I have another 17 hours of questions to ask you. Hopefully I can do it in person at some point, and we will be on the bandstand.
Let's do it again.
In the studio again. But man, thank you for your time, dude. I always appreciate being around you and talking and hanging out, and we will do it again. Where can people find you? BennyGreb.com, Instagram, BennyGreb. Write me a message and have a good time. Awesome. Thank you, brother. I'll speak to you soon, man. Thank you so much. Bye.